If you want to learn the exact step-by-step framework that I use to build a multi-six-figure lawn mowing business in just 1 year, and how you can then walk away and use the same framework to build a business that you're interested in, then you're not going to want to miss this video. This video is in response to the last one that I posted up regarding the hopscotch framework. And a lot of people were messaging me asking me, how can I put this to use? How can I practically use that framework of thinking? So what I did was I've started multiple businesses in the last few years. A number of them were extremely successful, one of them being the lawn mowing business. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the exact step-by-step process I used to build that from zero to $200,000 in 1 year, okay? So this is a super interesting video. It's not going to go into super depth. I'm just kind of going to skim through it because I don't want to make it too long of a video, but I do have some dot points here I'm going to go over. I'm going to read them out and then I'm going to go a little bit more in depth into them as I go through the video, okay? So keep in mind too at the end, I'm going to sort of talk on a little bit of a controversial topic when it comes to starting a business, but I think it's super important and I think a lot of people overlook it. So you're not going to want to miss that. That's going to be at the end. I'll leave that for the end. So make sure you stick around and see that. It's very important before you start a business. Now, the first one here is you're going to want to obtain an ABN. That's just super basic. It's not hard. It takes 2 seconds. You don't always need an ABN to start a business, but just get it out of the way to start with. Just get it out of the way. It takes 2 seconds. Just get one, and you can use the same number for all the businesses in the future. Just grab yourself an ABN. It takes 2 seconds. The second one is you're going to figure out what business model you're going to actually want to start. So the two are your product-based business or a service-based business. Now, the lawn mowing business is obviously a recurring service-based business model. I think a recurring service-based business model is the best for someone who has never been in business. If you're fresh to starting a business, a recurring service-based business model or a service-based business model in general are probably the ones with the least barrier to entry, because once you have the initial outlay to provide the service and you've purchased the things necessary to provide the service, you don't really need to upgrade or buy any more stuff until you want to scale and get bigger as a business. So once you've already made that original outlay, you're pretty much good to go. You don't really have to do much more than that. Now, I've had multiple product-based businesses, which are really great business models as well, but the only thing is it's a little bit more advanced. There's more moving parts, there's more overheads, and it's for someone who sort of has a bit of a grasp around how businesses are run. So product-based businesses are great too, but when you're fresh to business, I think a service-based business model or a recurring service business model are probably the best ones and the ones with the least barrier to entry. In my opinion, that's just my opinion, take it with a grain of salt. That's just what I think and it's what worked for me, okay? So in this situation, it's what worked for me, so that's why I can speak on it. Now the next one is to, once you've actually done, so just quickly, a few examples of that will be lawn mowing, hairdressing, house cleaning, personal training, so you can kind of understand where I'm trying to go with that. So that's a sort of a recurring business, service-based business model. Now, next you need to find out whether it's actually financially viable. A lot of people skip this step because they think that I'm just going to start a business and I'm going to make money. If I start a business, I'm going to make money. When in reality, that's not always the case, okay? A lot of people skip this step and they waste their fucking time and money. And when they start the business and they get everything and they start going, they realize this doesn't make any money. I'm wasting my time here. So it's crucial to do this step before you go any further. Figure out what business model you want to do and whether you want to produce a service or a product. Figure out what service or product you want to produce, and then you really need to do this next step, okay? You need to figure out whether it's financially viable. Now, how I did that is I used the hopscotch framework again, and what I did was I figured out after 1 year, I want to be able to generate $200,000 in next year. So I need to use 1 year to go from nothing to $200,000. So what I did was I used the hopscotch framework, I reverse engineered how I was going to have to do that by using a mathematical equation, and I've got the exact mathematical equation here, and I'm going to show you it. Now, this works for this, but it's going to also work for whatever you do as well. So it's going to give you a rough idea of how to do it, but this is how it worked within this situation, okay? So for me to make $200,000 a year, I then divided 52 weeks, okay? That's how many weeks are in a year if you didn't know. That gave me $3,646. So in order for me to make $200,000 a year, I had to make $3,646 a week. Then what I did is I divided that by 6 because I was willing to work 6 days a week. And then I divided that, so that produced $641. So for me to make $200,000, I was going to have to make $3,646 a week. And in order to do that in 6 days a week, I needed to make $641 per day. Then I went a little bit further. I realized that a standard lawn is generally charged out at about $80 if you buy yourself, okay? Now, what I did was I divided $641 that I have to make in a day by 80 to figure out how many lawns I was gonna have to actually mow per day to make the $200,000 a year. And that came out with 8 lawns. So for me to make $200,000 a year, I need to mow 8 lawns a day for 6 days a week. But I went a little bit further. Then what I did was I found out that in order to mow one standard lawn for $80, it takes around 45 minutes, okay? By yourself. So what I did was I times 45 minutes by 8 lawns a day, and that gave me 360 minutes, okay? So I was gonna have to mow lawns for 360 minutes a day to make 200 grand a year. Then what I did is I divided that number by 60 to give me how many hours I was gonna have to work per day to make $200,000 a year. That gave me 6. So what I've done was, by using the hopscotch framework, is I've gone from nothing to 200 grand, and I've reverse engineered exactly the mathematical equation of how many lawns I'm gonna have to mow per day, how many times per week to make X amount of dollars. So I figured out I was gonna have to mow 6 hours a day, 6 days a week to make $200,000 a year. Now, you can see why that step's so important, because now I know that it is 100% financially viable. I could work double that and make double the amount of money, okay? There are so many variables there, but what I'm trying to say is, before I even start, I know that this business is going to make money and I don't have to work a ridiculous amount of hours to get that, okay? So it's really important that we don't skip that step. I know it's a little bit technical, you might have to go back and sort of re-listen to how I've done that, but basically you just want to figure out how much you want to make per year, and just break that down into how many jobs you're gonna have to do per day, or how many X amount of things you're gonna have to do per week, etc., to figure it out. So that was super important to me. I literally went down to how many minutes I'm gonna have to work a day, because I wanted to get an exact number. Now, so you can see, well, that's pretty important. Now, the next step after that is, you know what business model you've got, you know what sort of service or product you want, you now know that it's financially viable. The next thing you wanna do is some market research. So you wanna get on and you wanna see what sort of market you're dealing with. Now, the reason for this is you want to see how saturated the market that you're going to be in is. So what saturated means is how many people are already within that market. How many people are already producing the product or service that you're looking to produce yourself. If it is super saturated and there is already a lot of people doing it, it doesn't matter that much. It just means that you're going to have to work a little bit harder when it comes to marketing and actually getting your name out there, because there's so many other people already doing it. So, for example, with Loaded Dough, it was obviously a super saturated market. That sort of market is so saturated. Treats and things like that, there is everywhere you go, there's that sort of thing. But Loaded Dough itself originally was a cookie business. So we produced cookies. So the sub niche itself was not saturated. There was almost no competition. So I realized that that business was probably going to grow quickly, which it did. It grew super, super quick. With the lawn mowing business, it was obviously super saturated. There's no real sub niche in that. You're just the mower man, okay? So I knew that I was gonna have to work a lot harder when it came to actually growing that business and marketing and things like that and getting my name out there, because there's so many people that are already providing that service. So it's important to realize before you go into a certain service or product is that you research the market and see what sort of competition you're coming up against. If it's really saturated, you just need to, it's fine. You just need to make a decision if it's worth it for you. Is it going to be worth your time to have to work that extra bit harder to actually get your name out there and compete against the many people that are already in that market? So it doesn't matter if it is, you've just got to make the decision and weigh it up if it's going to be worth it or not. So that's an important thing to do as well. Do a little bit of market research before you start, just to sort of see where you stand amongst other people, okay? So that's an important one as well. Now, once you've done that, this next step sort of people skip a little bit and they don't think it's too important, but I think it's important, is the business name. Now, you need to get a business name that I personally, your business name is your business identity, basically. It's how people identify you. So I think the business name does matter a little bit. So for example, with Loaded Dough, I think that's a pretty catchy name. It's different, it's cool. If I had named that business like Mitch's Big Cookies, it wouldn't have quite hit as much, because what you got to do with the business name is you can't just think about what it's called and how people say it. You got to think about how it looks on branding and marketing. So what does it look like on a shirt? What sort of colors are you going to use? What sort of slogans can you use? How's it going to look on the marketing materials, like, on the websites and flyers and vehicle signage and all that sort of stuff. So with Loaded Dough, it was a cool name, it was a cool logo, but it also had like a the color scheme was black, fluorescent blue, and fluorescent purple. So the colors were really popped, and you can see it on the social media page, and it looks appealing. It's an appealing looking thing. So it's not just the business name, it's all the other stuff that are around the name as well. So, it really comes down to how you can market the name. So I personally think that the name is somewhat important, and you should spend a little bit of time on trying to make up a name that you can then build a brand around. So I do think it's important not to skip that step yet. So, a lot of people do, but I think it's kind of important in my opinion. So anyway, The next step is you're going to need to register the business name with the ASIC. So the ASIC is just a website on Google you can go on. You just want to make sure that the name's actually available. So go on there, make sure the name's available. If it's not, you might need to slightly change it a little bit, or add a few letters here and there, or whatever way you can sort of get around it. But yeah, you're going to want to make sure that the business name is actually available before you register it. So ASIC, I think it's Australian Securities and Investment Commission, I think it's called, and register your name on there. So once you've got the name and you've done all that, you need to then obtain the relevant insurances, get the relevant licenses and certificates that you need in order to produce the product or provide the service. So for example, when I had the loaded dough business, just a little bit of context before that, you need to try your best in order to obtain all the things necessary, but sometimes you're not going to be able to because you're not going to know all the things that are necessary. So for example, with the loaded dough business, I didn't know that I had to have a FSS certificate, which is a food safety supervisor certificate. And on the certificate, you get a number, and that number allows you to operate a food business. Now, I didn't know I had never had a hospitality business before, so I didn't know I had to have those things. Now, generally, if you don't have the necessary legal requirements or certificates or licenses, you'll be notified, and they're not going to just shut you down. They're going to give you notice. They're going to tell you, look, you're going to need to obtain such and such in order to continue trading. They're not just going to shut you down. So before you start, do what you can, obtain as much as you can legally to get the business going, but do your best and just figure out the rest along the way is the best way that I think you can do it. Do as much as you can, get what you can sorted out, and figure out the rest along the way. You'll be notified if you're doing something wrong, and then you can change it. But just do what you can, obtain what you can, and figure out the rest along the way. That's my best advice when it comes to getting that sort of stuff, because sometimes there's a lot of different moving pieces. So yeah, do your best with that. Now, the next one's pretty obvious. You've got everything sorted out. The next step's pretty obvious. You just need to get the things and purchase the things in order to produce the product or the service. So, for example, with the lawn mowing, I just went to Bunnings Warehouse. I bought a lawnmower, whippersnipper, hedger, blower, all the sort of necessary things that I was going to need to produce, to provide the service. So that's sort of goes without saying, but it's just a step in there that you need to do. So you need to think of all the different things that you might need. Again, you might not need to get every single thing from the very start. Just get what you can, and you'll sort of figure out the rest along the way. So once you've finished that step, you've pretty much now got your business ready to roll. You are ready to start producing the product or providing the service. But the next thing that you need to do is the most important step, and it's probably a whole video in itself, and it's marketing. People aren't going to give you money, and they're not going to hire you if they do not know that you exist. Okay? A question that I ask all the time is, my business is not growing, I don't have enough clients, I'm not getting any new clients, why am I not growing? Generally what I'll say is, whoever they are, you have a glass cleaning business, right? You clean glass for a living. And they'll say, yeah. And I'll say, great. From where you are, if you drew a 100-kilometer radius around where you are, you probably got about 5 million pieces of glass you can clean, from houses to whatever it might be. There is so much opportunity for you to clean glass. There are millions of pieces of glass that you could clean, right? So do you think that there is a shortage of glass to clean? Or do you think that there is a shortage of knowledge that you even exist? And it's generally the second one. Generally, the problem is people who have the glass that needs to be cleaned don't know that you have a business. And that's where marketing is super important. So I'm not going to go too far in depth with it because there's a lot to do with marketing. It's a whole nother video, but it is the most important thing and the most important aspect about growing a business and scaling a business is being able to market it effectively. So, some examples of marketing would be Instagram, Facebook Marketplace, Google, websites, apparel, vehicle signage, flyers, business cards, TikTok. There are so many different examples of where you can market your product, and most of them are free. Some things like Higher Pages, OneFlare, like a paid subscription, but a lot of them are free, and a lot of my work was obtained through free advertising on social media and things like that. So, things like influencer marketing for, a lot of people who sell products utilize influencer marketing because that's a great way to do it. But there are so many different ways to market a product, and it is probably the most important thing that you can do. Well, it is the most important thing that you can do when it comes to growing a business and scaling a business to where you want it to be. That's a whole video on itself. I'm not going to go any more into that, but marketing is the number one thing when it comes to building and scaling a business. And when you market your business, your service, your product, You need to make sure that it funnels to one particular area where someone either exchanges their money for your product, or they can book in your service, or they can obtain more relevant information to buying your product or booking your service. It just needs to come to a certain place where there's more information available. So make sure you funnel it to one spot where there's more information available when it comes to your product or your service. Super important when it comes to marketing. You want to make sure there's one clear defined landing page or point for where you're trying to direct people to. So that's a great point there. Now, again, big topic there. We'll get into that in a later date. But marketing, number one, scaling and growing. Now, in order to grow to 6 figures, and in order to get a big, high income business, you've just got to do more of that. You've just got to scale that way up. So do more marketing. That's the only way to scale up to like multi 6 figures, is to just do more of that. So I know it sounds super like basic, but it literally is that basic. You don't have to do much more than that. You don't have to introduce more products or more services. You just need to scale what you do more. Especially when you're starting new and you're new in business, you don't want to have too many moving parts. You don't want to have too many products. You don't want to have too many services. You want to focus on a few main things and do them really well, and just market those to start with. You want to make sure you're an expert in a number of little things, and then you can start expanding later once you become more and more proficient in business itself. But to start with, have a little handful of things and become really fucking good at them, and then just market those things until you scale and grow to a point where then you can then start expanding into other things once you become a little bit better in business. Because business itself is not just a business. There's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes and things like that that you'll figure out. But again, this is just sort of a rough overview. So depending on the goals, the business that you want, these are going to change a little bit. There's going to be more added here, added there. There's going to be some that are a bit earlier than others. But this is just a really rough general framework that I use when it came to starting the lawn mowing business, just in the hope that it gets your sort of brain moving and the systems that are involved with it. So that's pretty much it for the steps that I used. So yeah, I hope that provided a little bit of value, and when it comes to sort of starting your own little business, and just getting your mind working of how the systems sort of look and the order that you might need to do things in. So the other little thing that I promised at the start, which was the semi-controversial thing that I wanted to talk about, is when you start a business, you don't need to love what you do. Too many people promote that you need to love what you do. If you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. In some circumstances, if you love what you do, you'll be working for the rest of your life. Because just because you love a cruelty-free vegan hand sanitizer doesn't mean a fucking thing if no one wants to buy it. Okay? The only thing that matters when you start a business, particularly early on, once you sort of get better at business, you can sort of branch into different things that you actually enjoy. But early on, you want to make sure that you make money. So generally, doing what you love doesn't make money, okay? So you've just got to make sure that whatever it is you end up doing, it's making money. The main goal is to make money. You don't always have to love what you do. You've just got to do something that's priced in accordance with how much you're willing to put up with, okay, to provide the product or service. So make sure that you're being compensated well enough to actually provide the service or product without hating it to the maximum. So you don't have to love what you do. You just need to get through the early days, get through the start of it until you start making enough money to be able to make decisions and pick and choose on where you want to go. That video is going to be more in depth in another video. That's another whole topic again, but just a little hot tip. When you start a business for the first time, you don't always have to love it. You've just got to make money from it. That's the most important thing, making money. So that's today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to start uploading probably 2 or 3 times a week with these longer form videos. Then I'll start chopping some up and putting some shorter ones out there as well. But I hope you enjoyed today's video. It's super late. I'm going to finish this up and get into bed, and then and get back into it tomorrow. So that's it for today. Have a great night, and I'll chat to you again soon.